Welcome to Mind Sattva, practical wisdom for modern life. I'm Dr. Mitika Kanabar. I'm an everyday seeker, a curious thinker, and a lifelong learner. Have you ever had those conversations where you thought, this needs to be explored a little bit more? Maybe it's about spirituality. Maybe it's about finding that one thing that helps you bring balance in your life. Mind Sattva is your space. It's your community where we all come together and develop this. Through conversations with guests, we will explore ideas about clarity and about living in balance. Balance is the beginning point, it's not the destination. Every episode is an invitation to think differently, to live fully, and begin again. Namaste. Welcome everybody to the Mind Sattva studio. I am your host, Dr. Mitika Kanabar. I'm starting a new series that I'm calling In the Flow, where we talk about concepts as we go along. It's as if we are together here at the Mind Sattva studio having a cup of adrak chai or ginger tea, as I call it. So welcome. Today's topic is something is very close to my heart. As you know, I'm an addiction medicine physician, and I have been working in the field for over a decade. September is Recovery Month, so I chose to highlight that this month. Let's start with a little experiment, or shall I say a little grounding. So I don't know how many of you have heard of these Tibetan singing bowls. I'm going to show you mine. So basically it's this brass bowl, or looks like brass to me. It's a metal bowl, and you have a device kind of creating the separation between your hand and the bowl itself, because you're trying to create vibrations that calm you down, that flip you from being into sympathetic overdrive to parasympathetic, where you kind of let go, you go into the relaxation mode. So this is a wonderful thing to listen to even before bedtime. It helps get you sleep. It turns off the noise from the day. And it's like peeling the layers of the onion as far as, overdrive or anxiety is concerned. You kind of ease off on all of the expectations of yourself a little bit and go to sleep. So how does this work? Well, let's listen. Just going to take a moment and feel that grounding. All right. So let's talk about recovery. When you search online, what is recovery? Interestingly enough, it'll give you more options about recovery from an exercise or other health issues standpoint. September Recovery Month, though, is about recovery from addiction or from substance use disorders as we know them. Recovery as a concept has gone through many phases and many differences in definitions. In my opinion, recovery is what begins the day you decide to get help. It may not turn out to be what you thought it was. It's going to be something completely unique to yourself. People find their way to recovery, that is, either staying abstinent from substance use, that's generally the main theme, or having some kind of support with trying to get more substance-free days. People can view it in different manner. So some of the ways would be that, one, you go to a medical professional, then you make sure you get evaluated, especially things like alcohol or sleeping pill use, because that's when you have a high chance of seizures. And there are other issues such as opiate addiction, where, of course, you need to get medications to get better because it's very deadly, as we all know. And then they may go into rehab, where they start looking into patterns that emerge and try to stay sober for a certain amount of time with or without use of medications. That is kind of the general concept. Now, outside of, say, the medical or the mental health infrastructure, there are things such as 12-step self-help groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and so on. There are many kind of offshoots of the original AA. People can use that as a step into recovery. Like, let me at least start exploring AA while I build up the nerve to even go seek help. So it can start when you're willing to start. Things such as Alcoholics Anonymous work on 12 steps. So 12 steps start with first step one is acknowledging that you are powerless against this problem or this disease. And then you attribute your success to some higher power who's going to guide you through. Now, even though the wording is very secular, many people will find it difficult to work with that. And that's their part. Some people work with it, they do very well, and that's that. So, what about those who want to have help outside of these specific arenas? There are things like smart recovery that are more cognitive behavioral therapy based. So, they can start attending Zoom meetings on smart recovery as to how do you get better, kind of in the old fashioned way. What can I teach myself to start my process of getting better from substance use disorders? There are many such other groups, and they can also have a denominational, like a religious background to it, such as I think Victory Outreach, Life Recovery. They are more Christian based, and then there is Refuge Recovery that is Buddhist based. They are not exactly, especially Buddhist recovery is not 12-step based. They have their own basis in the concepts of karma and dharma. So for those who want a little bit Eastern perspective, they can go for that. Now, if you were to look up the SAMHSA definition of recovery, this is how it goes. So SAMHSA defines recovery as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. Recovery signals a dramatic shift in the expectation for positive outcomes for individuals who experience mental and substance use conditions or the co-occurring of the two. So what is SAMHSA, by the way? SAMHSA is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It's a federal body that helps people with substance use disorder, creates these awareness campaigns and sort of standards of care for the country, for the United States. So about 50.2 million Americans consider themselves to be in recovery from substance use and or mental health problems. 2 in 3 adults who ever had a mental health problem think of themselves in recovery, and 7 in 10 adults who ever had a substance use problem think of themselves in recovery. There are 4 major dimensions of recovery as outlined by SAMHSA. First is health. Of course, managing the disease itself, taking medications, taking care of all of your health parameters, as well as abstaining from use of alcohol or illicit drugs or medication that was not just that you got from a friend. So any of these areas of addiction you can consider as your health focus on recovery. Home. We know that being unhoused increases your risk of using substances or keeps you in this pattern of just living to get by. Having a stable home life is important for recovery. And number 3 is purpose. So having this purpose where, I have a role in society, or I give back to society, or I interact with others that brings me joy, or I have a job that brings me a paycheck. There should be some kind of purpose that is very hard to determine when you are in the throes of addiction, because this is a disease that takes everything from you. So working on that with a counselor, therapist, coach, whoever, finding your way to having a purpose in life is very important. And then this is where even 12 steps are amazing, because you can have a sponsor or a temporary sponsor, somebody who's been in recovery for a year or more, and can guide you like, oh, I know how that feels. I know how devastating that feels. And I know a little bit of where you can go from here. And then community. Community, I think, is the most taken for granted aspect for recovery or in life in general in today's day and age, right? With so many changes with technology and other things, we are all kind of living in our silos. Even though we are connected at the touch of a button, we miss that interpersonal relationship. There is a different experience to meeting somebody in person, connecting face to face, and exchanging ideas that used to be used more before lives became over busy. So, having relationships and social networks that help with recovery is part four of the four major dimensions of recovery. So, all of this put together, we understand that how much of a social and medical issue it becomes with addiction or mental health or problems of any kind. So, if you just take a moment and just go through what I just said, you will realize that recovery is extremely difficult and intensely personal. Everybody has to find their own paths through. One of the things that I get asked to talk about all the time is screen addiction. And all of us can understand that we are hooked to our screens in some way or the other. And yes, I know that we are having this talk on a screen right now. Bear with me. Just give me a second here. Okay. So when I'm either researching about behavioral addictions as we know it, non-substance addictions are called behavioral addictions, and screen addiction, gaming, gambling, all of that are part of behavioral addictions. We look at patterns, what is shown to be proven effective. Now, there's this concept called recovery capital, which I find is the most unexplored concept in addiction research, and also the most fascinating for me. With Mind Sattva, I'm all about building a community, and this is where recovery capital also comes in. So, recovery capital is this idea that what are your internal, external, and societal things that you can do for yourself that can bring you closer to recovery. That's all in good in a psychological or philosophical construct. But that's not what makes research papers. Research papers means that there is a way to quantify this, identify this consistently, and then put it on a mathematical scale. And when you look at spirituality and behavioral addictions, which I wrote a paper with my colleagues on, it is fascinating how these two kind of go hand in hand and not in many ways. So think about it. So recovery capital, all of us need to build as a primary prevention before even the first substance use occurs. Can we choose differently? Can we build our interpersonal relationships that we are not constantly online so that when in times of trouble, we have a friend to call in emergency? This is some of the work I do with my public speaking on screen addiction. Something to think about. All right. So we just talked a lot about some very important nuggets of information that, I would love for you to take the time and think about. Maybe you know somebody in real life who has issues with substance use disorders or other behavioral addictions. Would you be able to help them with health, home, purpose, community, any of these dimensions? Maybe take the next few weeks to kind of just understand the concepts as they stand. If you like this idea of in the flow talks for the Mind Sattva podcast, please do let me know. What are some other topics, whether it is lifestyle medicine, addiction, spirituality, what have you, that you would like to have conversations about or you have questions for? Please do mention in the comments. And I would like to end with a big thank you for those who are listening. And as we say in my language, Aujo, we shall meet again. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today on Mind Sattva, Practical Wisdom for Modern Life. If today's episode sparked something within you, I hope you share it with a friend who may need it too. We discussed some ideas and concepts. Let's take some time to observe them in nature or in daily life. Until then, let's stay curious, grounded, and remember that balance is not a destination, it's just a beginning. Let's meet again, or Aujo.